and gentlemen, they told me I'd need a microphone. Hello, welcome to this year's Fulton lecture. After last year's very successful event and your positive feedback, well, some of you, we decided again to have it here at the 1599 at the Royal College. We had 127 doctors registered, 83 in person, we're well into the 60s, and 44 online. Hello, everyone online. We've also got 3 new fellows here tonight, and 4 award winners. We'll come to them later, but I'd like to welcome their non-medic partners, Jennifer, who works in social care employment, Rachel, who works in AI, trying to put it into general practice, policies and procedures. Ask her about Heidi and Lexicom and the various things later. Paddy, who works in the police. And I said non-medics, James, I'm really sorry, but radiology, does that really count? And what is the waiting time for a routine GP requested CT chest abdo pelvis at the moment? Answers on a postcard later, please. I'd like to thank the members and events team who have made all this possible and have been dealing with the IT and everything else. They'll also be taking pictures later for our new Instagram account. Please get in big happy groups and smile for Kirsty here at the front. Kirsty, can you just wave to everyone? Yep, so pictures, please. Any pictures that you have, you can always send to us and we can put them on Faculty Fortnightly, etc. My name is Michael. Michael Blackmore, I'm your chair. There are no fire alarms planned for this evening. When I first became chair, I kind of fell into it, arse first. About 2.5 years ago, there were lots of gaps in faculty board, including no education lead. As chair, new chair, I was invited along to the Scottish Training Committee, and I kind of didn't really want to. I couldn't be bothered. So I got one of our lovely GP ST1s who was very, very malleable and used the art of delegation. And I got Akram to go along. Akram went along. I started going along as well. Akram came back to me one day and he said, I've met this lovely bloke. He's the NES lead, Nitin. He's such a nice bloke. I did go to some of those meetings and I told my story from addiction to recovery at a trainers conference and other events. And Nitin came up to me and he gave me such positive, encouraging, kind, nurturing feedback. We've started working collaboratively with NES. NES lost a bit of their funding a while ago. We tried to get our faculty board members to go along to GP ST1 induction events. And we even supplied some of the food. I had to leave my practice early one day, go to the local sandwich shop, then travel in a weird sort of equilateral triangle to go and deliver the food. But it's lovely. We're happy to help. When we advertised on the faculty board group who we wanted to come along this year, we usually have about 10 to 20 suggestions. This year, we pretty much had the one, and everyone was unanimous. And let's face it, after buying his lot food, Nitin owes us. Nitin is a representative of a large swathe of GPs across these 5 health boards that we cover in West Scotland. We've got about 800 out of 2,000, 800 IMGs out of 2,000 of our GPs. That's about 40%. Nitin came here in 2000 as an IMG. He CCT'd as a GP in 2003. Since then, he's been a GP principal here in Glasgow. He is one of us, says the English boy. He currently serves as postgraduate dean at NES and oversees postgraduate training in not only primary care, but also mental health and public health across Scotland as well. He's got a strong interest in equality, diversity and inclusion. He's the lead dean for advancing equality at NES. He also advises FRCGP in London and the Irish College in Dublin on EDI-related matters. He's an MRCGP examiner, so if anyone's failed, talk to him. And was awarded FRCGP in 2018. When you still had to pay for it, I spoke to someone here tonight who got it for free this year. Right. Now I've got that off my chest. In 24, he was appointed Honorary Professor in General Practice by University of Glasgow in recognition of his significant contributions to medical education and general practice. Outside of work, this is going on too long, Nitin. Outside of work, Uh, Nitin lives in Glasgow with his wife, who is also an NHS doctor. They have 2 adult children. His interests include hiking, cycling, skiing, and badminton. He serves as honorary medical officer for both Badminton Scotland and the Badminton World Federation. That sounds like a lot of shuttlecock. No. Are there any trainers in here tonight? Excellent. This is for you. Any trainees in? This is for you. You are our future. You are the solution to Scotland's prosperity. For every £1 spent in general practice, that saves about £14 in benefit to the economy. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow GPs, non-medics, and a radiologist, I give you Professor Nitin Gambhir and his lecture on belonging, becoming, and building the future GP training in Scotland. Nitin.
Michael, thank you. Honestly, this is not usual for me to actually give talks when people are having their food. The only time I've done this before is when I was in my band playing music as a drummer. But Michael, thank you for those kind words. When Michael actually phoned me one day, he does have my phone number, by the way, one of the few people who has my phone number. Michael said, "We want you to speak at the Fulton talk." And I thought, knowing Michael very well, I think Michael's having a bad day today. Or then I thought, Michael, have you got this right? I genuinely couldn't believe that he wanted me to come and speak here. But honestly, Michael, knowing Michael for all these years and the inspirational figure that you yourself are, Michael, actually, I couldn't say no to you. And in a way, on reflection, what I thought was that, you know, what probably I'm representing here today is the new face of general practice, not just in the UK, but in Scotland as well. The change that has taken place in our workforce, in the diverse populations that we serve. Scotland prides in that. And probably alongside our old traditional voices, I might be the new voice, the kind of blend, I hope, of tradition and transformation. That was my reflection of why Michael might have invited me. However, having said that, it is still an honor and a privilege, and I'll try and do as much justice as I can to this talk. It is autumn. This is the only good picture you're going to see about me and myself. Every other picture that I'm going to share with y'all is cringeworthy and embarrassing for me. But I do want y'all to see what I mean. As Michael said, I do come here with a lot of hats on, but I don't represent any of these organizations that I work for today. What I bring is an experience from each of these lenses that I've seen general practice, how I've witnessed transformation in general practice training. And as you know, as Michael said, my key role is to try and establish a healthy, sustainable future workforce for Scotland, particularly in general practice, but also psychiatry and public health. So there is no conflict of interest in today's talk. It's always nice to probably share where your starts are, where your roots are, and where you started your journey. Obviously, Pune, the English love to anglicize the names. They called it Pune for many decades. Then it again went back to Pune. That's the kind of remote part of India where I come from, and I still feel that as an IMG is standing here as postgraduate dean, can I believe myself that was what I foresee, what must have foreseen in 2000 when I came here? Absolutely not. I mean, I still pinch myself to think that the day I came to this country, I was knocking doors of people, including the then postgraduate dean, Ken Cochran. What should I do about my career in Scotland? I've come to Glasgow. What would you advise? And 25 years down the line, I am postgraduate dean for the whole of the West. And it's unbelievable. The journey is unbelievable. It couldn't have been possible without a lot of friends, a lot of colleagues, mentors, inspirational leaders, but also the patients who believed in me. Actually, they believed in me before I believed in myself, probably. And that was quite interesting. And I'll share some bits there as well. The only reason I'm sharing these pictures, and some of them are very, very intimate and close to my heart, is because it shows a little bit of PTSD that I have. And the kids know in our house that daddy suffers from PTSD. What is daddy's PTSD? Daddy's PTSD is toilets. And the reason for the PTSD about toilets is because those were the toilets I was having access to when I was growing up until the age of 14. The first time I had an independent toilet in my own house was when I was about 15 years old. So that's the PTSD. Every time I enter a hotel, whether it's somebody's house, the first thing I go is check out the toilets. Weird, crazy, but that's what it is. And these are humble beginnings. Life is good when you don't have much of a comparator. It's happy and it's pretty good. That was the only bed in the room. The only funny thing about that little toilet was my brother and me could throw hot water at each other, basically. That's about it. But one of the best things which parents did for me was send me to this Catholic school in India. This was called a St. Vincent's High School. This is a school which was run by the Jesuits, the Jesuit Society. And these were Jesuits from Germany who actually ran the school. The only thing which was important in this school was discipline, and their belief, as you know, Jesuits, discipline shapes destiny and discipline builds character. So much so that, in India, believe it or not, cricket is religion, but you were not allowed to play cricket in the school. It was only football. Uh, a lot of focus was on global development. So, and I was not allowed to speak anything but English. English wasn't my first language at that time, but I wasn't allowed to speak anything but English in the school. What the astute in the room might also pick up is the picture in the middle, and the Holy Cross there. And what was quite fascinating was all my upbringing. I was born Hindu, but it really wasn't part of my awareness because we had Muslim friends, we had Christian friends, we had Sikh friends. We had to go and celebrate each of those festivals. Probably gone through most of the Sunday masses as well in the school. So for me, I had a very unique understanding of Christianity until I came to Glasgow. And and believe it or not, it was an eye-opener because actually I thought, oh, this is going to be the same. Everybody goes to church and everybody celebrates this and that and Christmas and whatnot. And then the first day, I'm working in an A&E shift, and there's a child who comes and says, there's a little lower end radius undisplaced fracture. You want a plaster in situ. I pick up the plaster. It happens to be a green plaster. And there's an absolute carnage in that room. Because how dare you put in a green plaster for my child? No chance. This has to be a blue or no color. And that's when the nurse tapped on my shoulder and said, you know what, just listen to what they're saying. I'll explain to you what this whole green and blue divide is in Glasgow. But that's how informal mentors kind of are there to shape and support you. Journey into medicine wasn't some sort of an epiphany or some sort of a kind of well thought out plan. In a way, it's in India, in a lot of cultures, it's a family project. It's a family project. What's your child going to do? Particularly a boy, what's he going to do? And I still remember, you know, dad saying, look, wherever you go, as long as there are people, they're going to need doctors. And as long as they're going to need doctors, you'll have a job. So actually in India, there were only three choices: engineering, medicine, or disappointment. That's it. You choose what you like. And I was lucky to be able to choose between engineering and medicine, but this was the reason I chose medicine. Yes, of course, it offered me stability, global presence, or again, global stability, if you want to call it, and a recognition in society as a doctor. But medicine wasn't a very thought out choice. Um, that's the medicine I was exposed to in India. And this is not unusual even till today. I'm talking, this is about 1995, I'm showing pictures, but this is still the case. Attending a doctor is still a huge issue, a huge, if you like, access issue for a lot of people who are poor. Try and understand what sort of position they hold the doctor in. Doctor is next to God. God will give you life, but the doctor preserves it. There's a lot of hierarchy there as being a doctor, and that's exactly what I was exposed to. And and what's useful about that slide is a lot of our IMGs like me come to this country with a very different understanding of healthcare and healthcare environments, and and this is where Gert Hofstede is. I'd love to share this bit about his cultural dimensions. And what cultural dimensions do is help us understand what the values and behaviors are across different cultures, different societies. And the one I was referring to in particular was power distance. If you if you look at, I mean, essentially power distance is nothing but how people relate to sort of accepting authority within society. And it's one of those most relevant dimensions for international medical graduates coming to the UK, where, you know, in India or Pakistan or Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, in all of Asia, you know, you'll hold people in high regards, the consultant or the teacher or the politician or whatever. And you come to the UK, it's quite a different sort of, you know, shared decision making, and that power distance does manifest quite in a quite challenging way for a lot of our IMGs. This is one of those studies which Jill Morrow did, looking at transition of overseas graduates coming to the UK over a period of 5 to 10 years. And what she found out was power distance was extremely important. And this is how doctors perceived medicine in the UK, just having come into the UK. You know, in most Asian countries, doctors are seen as higher compared to nurses. Now, that's, if you hold that value here, you're dead, you're finished. You know, it is difficult from where I come from. Speaking to the consultant, challenging him, asking him questions, no chance. There was no chance I would ever challenge or ask a question to my consultant. This was a funny one. Patient-centered approach felt like doctor absent approach to me. That was quite interesting, isn't it? But the reason to kind of share, and there are many other cultural dimensions which actually put IMGs at a disadvantage when they come to a completely new healthcare environment, a new culture. Um, a bit about my journey. For me, the biggest culture shock actually wasn't coming to the UK. There was a little transition of a year in Denmark. And that was the first time I felt what culture shock was, because that's the year when I sort of felt the bereavement of family, bereavement of friends, bereavement of finances, food. You know, food was different. Danish meatballs, come on. I mean, I'm grown up with chicken tikka masalas and all that kind of stuff. And then I'm going to ask for Danish meatballs. Not being able to eat after 6 o'clock. Indians eat at 11 o'clock at night. So what am I going to do between 6 and 11? Can't phone home. At that time, remember, there were no internets, there were no Facebooks, there was nothing there. Even to be able to pick up the phone to speak to family and the 4-month-old boy that I had left back home was impossible. And that's when it hits you that why am I here? What am I here to do? And what are my actual goals? What are my actual ambitions? And once again, there's not usually a huge amount of thought, but the reason I've put these pictures here is these are the people, and you can see how horrible my picture is there. Now that's the kind of difference I wanted to share with you all. There, that's me in 2000. That's my wife. And these are the two professors who, for some reason, knew somebody in Glasgow. And they said, well, you're doing orthopedics here. I know somebody in Glasgow. Your wife is already in the UK. Why don't you go to Glasgow? Because till date, when I tell people I'm working in Glasgow, they say, why Glasgow of all the places? You could have gone anywhere. I still phone home after 25 years and I speak to somebody, relatives. They say, oh, Nitin's calling from London. And I'm like, no, Glasgow. Glasgow is different. There is something beyond London in the UK as well. But there we go. And essentially that's where the UK journey started. I mean, it's as simple as that. That's Ken Cochran, by the way. If I don't know if anybody knew Ken, Paul, you knew probably Ken. And Ken, the person who actually gave me access to Ken's diary was Lisa Pearson. And Lisa Pearson today is part of my medical directorate still 25 years down the line. And that's how we come full circle actually in these things, isn't it? At that time, the young doctors may or may not know, but accommodation was free. And I was given accommodation in the children's hospital there. And that's the boy who finally managed to be united with his mother after about 6 months or so. So, just a little bit of that story. Where did the general practice story start? The general practice story started with a bit of, again, orthopedics. You're not fit for orthopedics was the feedback I used to get. And I used to think, okay, what's the problem? Well, you talk too much to your patients, okay? And your patients connect with you. And there's no time in orthopedics for doing that. Was an interesting feedback. Anyway, the real reason is as life happened, I was doing jobs after jobs, and suddenly that time it was self-construct training. And so I was ready to become a GP registrar. At that time, you didn't have to apply. You just went. I went to Bridgeton Health Center. I went and met Bob Jameson, my trainer. And Bob said, oh, when can you start? And I was like, when do you want me to start? And that was it. And that was me, a GP registrar. What Bridgeton taught me was the reality of people who really have significant challenges, life being pretty difficult. And that's where the health inequalities bit started forming an impression for me. Bridgeton, as people will know, most of you all from the West, was one of the most deprived constituencies in Scotland. But I found a bit of an identity with those patients. Patients actually respected doctors. They actually trusted and listened to you. Of course, they came very late. It's not that they didn't value their health, but sadly, it was just not their priority amongst all the problems of mental health, addictions, alcohol, and everything else. But Bridgeton is where the journey started. And this is very important because actually, you know, Bob Jameson had a very unique view about how he would train people. And, and this is where I wanted to introduce the concept of asset versus deficit. The problem of the deficit model is it's like IMGs are a problem. The IMGs have a need or they have a deficit. They need to be trained or supported. And rather than actually thinking that, is the strengths first approach or looking at that sort of diversity of experiences, the challenges that IMGs have come through. And what Bob was unique was to pick up that on me. And he used to never, ever make me feel that I'm a glass half full. He would always make me feel glass half empty. It would always make me feel glass half full. Thank you for your eye feedback. But what that led to me was in 2015, this is what we started. And actually, I do give credit to Bob and this asset and deficit model because that was the foundation of our GP STEP Enhanced Induction Program. This has been running since 2015. It's 10 years, close to 3,000 attendees across Scotland have come through this program. It's an enhanced induction program for IMGs. It's been reported by the GMC, it's been published, it's been embraced in Ireland, as I said, it's been embraced in a couple of European countries. And the key bit about this program is the trainer-trainee relationship. We make sure that the trainer comes in order to establish that supportive trainer-trainee relationship. And I do give credit to my own experiences, actually. Had I not had those experiences as a trainee, I'm not sure how I would have felt or how I would have progressed. And the program has now grown arms and legs, and now every specialty, every training and non-training grade in Scotland gets the same exposure. It's called as the Welcoming IMGs New to Scotland. That's been up and running for the last 2 years, and I'm leading on that program, which is an absolute privilege. There's an interesting thing I kind of wanted to say is, when I tried to establish myself as a GP, I went for a job. There were about 45 applications. I was the only non-white applicant. I wanted to become an appraiser. And again, I went for the appraisal selection day. I was the only non-white person sitting there. I went to become a trainer and then became a trainer and sat in my first trainer meeting. I was the only non-white person there. Became a TPD. I was the only non-white person there. A lot has changed. Of course, a lot has changed over the last 25 years. But what was important was, that you have to continue to believe in yourself and you've continued to put your mind to what you actually want to do. And it's very important to understand that snowy white peaks, or the white privilege, is not about the fact that others don't have problems. We all have problems, but at least your skin color is not the reason why you have disadvantages. And that's the reason I thought I'll put this forward. This is another horrible picture, but anyway, the picture is made better by the kids, because this is the day when I was offered the partnership in the practice. And once again, you know, coming to Bob was in a way quite realistic. And Bob used to feel, you know, Nitin's an IMG. If he passes the exam the first time, this is brilliant. And I'll do everything I can to support Nitin to pass the exam. And Catherine was his previous registrar, and Catherine had passed the MRCGP with merit. So, you know, on the day the exam results were going to be shared at 5 o'clock, Bob usually always sits there. But that day, Bob wasn't there. Bob had gone home. So, you know, the website opens at 5, you start looking at your exam results, and I'm seeing the list for pass, and my name is not there. So I'm like, that's it. Okay, I've let Bob down. And then somebody, the receptionist, Maria, and I remember her name still, said, why don't you just look at pass with merit? You might be there. So I looked at pass with merit. It was a very short list, name not there. And the only list remaining was pass with distinction, and I was never going to look at it. So I closed the computer. And Marie insisted that, please, for my sake, have a look at it. And there were 7 names, and my name was in pass with distinction. And I was like, Bob came the next day morning, and actually it was an awkward, happy, but surprise, but a very interesting interaction. He couldn't be more proud for me, but it was a very interesting interaction. And all that it says is that, you know, you do need people who believe in you. And there are 2 people here, Colin Hodgson. Does anybody know Colin? Yeah, you know Colin. Colin was the one who, you know, there's taps on your shoulders, those important sort of taps. These are quite crucial. And Colin in 2012 said, why don't you, Nitin, come to a trainers meeting and actually speak about your IMG experiences? And that was the first time I sat in this big auditorium, 250 trainers from the West. And I said, okay, I share my journey, heart open. And then came another tap on the shoulder. That was Joe McConnell, one of my mentor till he retired. And Joe said, why don't you become an examiner? And that's when the training and education journey actually started. For me, it was a snowy white peak coming into training and education. For me, NES was an ivory tower. I never, ever imagined that actually these roles are for me. But these 2 people were instrumental in actually introducing medical education and training for me. Culture shock, and it manifests in different ways. You know, that's the culture I was used to. And that's the culture you come to. You come to the UK, Denmark, wherever, and you wake up in the morning and you think, where is everybody? Why is it so quiet? I mean, is there some curfew, or is there some mourning or something else going on? And it starts kind of, you know, manifesting in different ways. These are finite challenges IMGs face. You know, the risks of unconscious bias. I mean, you know, they are valid. And I'll come to it in a minute. The fear of being labeled problematic, language, communication, NHS, how does it work? What is a GP's role? Do you have enough supportive peers around you? What about exams? I've never given MCQs. I've never done OSCEs. I don't know what an e-portfolio is. I don't know what feedback is. Nobody has ever given me feedback. How do I navigate all these challenges? This is quite genuine. And the biggest is practicalities. I'll tell you a funny story. I came in, I wanted a mobile phone, went to a mobile phone, I think it was Orange that time. And I said, I need a mobile phone. They said, oh, do you have a bank account? And I said, do you need a bank account? Okay, I'll go to the bank. Or do you have an address? Well, it's not my own address. So no, then we can't give you a bank account. Then go back to the phone station. Oh, do you have a credit history? How do I get a credit history? You need a bank account. So it's like I'm going round and round in circles, trying to establish the simplest thing possible, which is a phone, access to a phone. And for that, you don't have a bank account and you don't have a credit history. And somebody said, the only way you can get a credit history is take a loan. And I'm like, I've never taken a loan in my life. People who come from India don't take loans. You only live by what you have. So, it's quite interesting how even practicalities, simple practicalities, driving, housing, rent. Akram, we've spoken so many times about these. These are finite challenges we've tried to share. And these issues which really manifest as culture shock is really a bad feeling. It's a feeling like a fish outside the water. And many of our IMG colleagues go through it. They can be in this space for 3 years, 6 years, sometimes even up to 10 years. But you have to pick yourself up. You have to. All of us go through a dip. I'm sure people from here, if you go to South Africa, New Zealand, wherever, will also go through a culture shock. But you have to pick yourself up. And what helps pick yourself up is a process called as acculturation, or it's also called as code switching. Code switching is nothing, but I've got into a habit of looking at people, how they talk, how they behave, how they dress. Andrew was my partner that time, and I started literally copying Andrew, how he used to actually dress and come to the practice, because that is how you feel you start to fit in. And that's a part of the process. Is it the only part of the process? No, because what you actually see is the visible part of the culture, how people eat, how people talk, how people behave, how people speak, the accent, or whatever, the rituals, knife, fork, everything else. But what you don't see is what lies beneath the surface. And that's those values, those attitudes, those behaviors, what makes you a Scottish culture or whatever culture you are in. And the only way I knew I'm going to get into this is by what is called as a cultural submerge. Warning you, some more horrible pictures coming your way. Okay? There's something called as group bias, and some of you will have faced in different ways or the other. And group bias is, it used to be, I used to go to a coffee room, I'm standing there, and after about 5 minutes, conversation would dry out for me because there was nothing common between what people were talking there and what I was identifying with. Or I felt nothing I could actually say or share with colleagues in the room. And that's where this concept of in-group and out-group comes. If you're part of the in-group, you're part of the team. You're supported, you become, those informal sort of support systems start activating for you. But if you're part of the out-group, which I was for a long time, then there you go. And I thought, what is it that's going to get me in the in-group? What do these people talk? They talk about, hiking. They talk about cycling. They talk about, if you're very fancy, this was very late, I started doing skiing. And that gave me opportunities to talk, to connect, to actually share what I actually can do or what did I do over the weekend. Ben Nevis, drums, I said, this is what I did. But can you see another common thread here? The thread is ethnic homophily. Even there, what I was doing was ethnic homophily is birds of a feather flock together. I was still trying to find people who were like me and who could identify with me. And I was still not comfortable to break those barriers and say, this is a mixed group. This is, if I have to grow in this system, I have to actually understand everybody. But this is just quite interesting. And sorry for those cringy pictures there once again. Something else was happening. Now, I've said to you, I was from a Catholic school. English was compulsory. And in a way, even though English was not my mother tongue, it was quite part of my upbringing and education. But still, there were some problems. Some problems were happening with me, and I was not able to understand. And the problems were not as simple as just the medical problems, the British politeness about, I don't want to bother you, doctor. And I would take it matter of fact, okay. However, the signal there is there's something seriously wrong. I really need to see you today. Or the weather small talk, the nurse told me, start every consultation with weather. You'll never go wrong. The loo problem, I've got the runs and I'm thinking, why is he running? Or waterworks, what's the problem? Plumbing, why? Those were sort of faux pas, if I may call it language faux pas, which were happening to me. And I was still not understanding that actually, even though the language is the same, if the context is wrong, even if your intent is one, the understanding might be quite different. And this is what was happening to me, even though my English was capable, if you like, adequate. if you like. But, this is what the British were saying. This is what I was understanding. And this was actually what you were trying to tell me. You know, I hear what you say, or with greatest respect, you know, oh, I was a bit disappointed, or very interesting, you know, or I almost agree. Now, these are these downgraders, as we call it. And the British culture uses a lot of downgraders in communication, whereas Asian cultures or other cultures, there are upgraders. Everything is clear, everything is bold, everything is precise. But this is what was happening to me. And this was this we did a study in transitions in Scotland, and this was a UK white surgeon saying this. I'm a UK trained doctor, reasonably senior surgeon, moved 400 miles just from Cardiff to here to join a hospital in the community where my wife worked. I reckon it took me 2 years to finally work out the nuances of language, accent, behaviors, and relationships. Largely became then accepted. How much longer would it take someone with a different accent, perfectly competent, but trained thousands of miles away in a different environment? And that was quite a powerful statement. However, it is important to remind people that English still is merely a language. It's not a measure of intelligence. So please don't ever feel that you can judge people by their language. When something happened in 2014, and this is one of those landmark things which happened in medical education and training. The British Association of Physicians and of India, BAPIO, I think, took RCGP to court, saying that their assessments were discriminatory and biased, and there was a racial element to the bias as well. And the court, Justice Mitting, heard it and eventually decided that actually the exams are fair, they're proportionate, there's no bias. But what he did say is something is wrong, something wrong is happening here. There is a huge attainment gap. And he couldn't understand why this attainment gap was. And the attainment gap is very simple. It's not got to do with competence. It's not got to do with effort. It's persistent. It's consistent, but it's a difference in attainment between a protected characteristic and another. In this case, international medical graduates. He was puzzled that why is this the case when actually doctors are having the same training which any other doctor would have, but why are these doctors underperforming so much? And this is what one of those biggest studies, 180,000 assessments across the UK showed that differential attainment is a pretty big problem in the UK. Your chances of passing an exam, if you're a UK graduate, are twice as much compared to if you're an international medical graduate. So it's primarily related to your primary medical qualification. It's also related to your ethnicity. And the third rather sad risk factor was disability as well. Of course, religion came, gender came, and a lot of other socioeconomic factors came into it. But what was clear was this was not lack of competence. This was not lack of effort. It was something systemic within the system which was disadvantaging some of these doctors. And you can see the difference in attainment there. Huge, massive. Same in general practice, massive. Same in RPs or progression in training. Same in recruitment. Same in ethnicity. And that's the magnitude of the problem. What's the issue? I mean, one could argue that actually the system is not broken. It was always built this way. And it's Sharon's laughing, but it's the way you perceive the problem. And is it actually a problem? But to be honest, I like this visual metaphor, which is really powerful for me, which is, we're all in the same storm, but not in the same boat. And this visual metaphor sort of compares the advantages or privileges we all have. And we all will have different privileges in society. It might be money, it might be education, it might be whatever, upbringing. But somebody's in a big naval warship, somebody's in a little tiny boat there, all need to reach the harbor in a perfect storm. But you need to help those little boats there so that all have an equal chance of reaching the harbor. And that's what differential attainment is all about. It's not because the person in that little boat is not putting in an effort. It's not because they are not having the competence. It's because of the situation and the disadvantage. People always ask me, have you faced racism in Scotland ever? And to be honest, overtly, I would say probably not. I don't remember, except one episode that I remember when we were in Forge Shopping Center. I think this was 2001. I was sitting with my little boy on a bench, and a little girl came running, and they were little kids. She felt she could play with him, and the mother came running and said, "Oh, don't play with him. He might be an immigrant. Move away." So that probably is the only time I remember something like that, hearing somebody. But, do I blame her today for this? Probably not, because actually, unconscious bias, we all have them. If there's anybody in this room who thinks they don't have bias, then you're wrong. You may have positive biases, you may have negative biases, you may have biases about different things than I have biases, but we all have biases because that's how our brain is wired. We all use shortcuts. That's how our brain functions. And shortcuts is for efficiency, because when you process all this information, you want efficient decision making. And that decision making is based on years and years of cultural inputs, how you respond, how you've been fed back information. And so biases is part of us. And if you don't believe, then do read that book from Daniel Kahneman. It's a Nobel Prize winning book on thinking fast, thinking slow. And that book, when I read that book, it allowed me to understand that lady a bit more. That it's not her fault, it's just the way we are wired. And the only way to reduce biases is cultural competence. And the more you deliver cultural competence to people, the better the chances of reducing stereotypes and biases. So essentially, unconscious bias is not an accusation, it's just an explanation. We're doing a lot of things for IMGs here. And that's just a small little flavor of what's happening in Scotland for international medical graduates. We've obviously try and give them as much as we can even before they come to the country. We try and offer them buddies, we offer them mentors. We've got an IMG support network on Facebook. We're offering them softer landing, which is the initial induction as soon as they take up their first hospital jobs, simulation-based training, wins, and then we've also got a big, huge IMG information hub on Turas. Is it enough? Well, we've come a long way. There's a huge momentum behind us now, and there's no way it's going to stop, because we still have about 40% of our learners in Scotland who are from an international medical graduate background. Having spoken so much about IMGs, the one message I would really want to stress is, please don't take this wrong message. When I came here in 2000, there was no term called as IMGs. People did not recognize me as an IMG. I didn't hear that word IMG. At the moment, everybody keeps talking about IMGs, and differential attainment. So please don't go away today thinking that IMGs means a problem. There are plenty of high-performing IMG doctors. There are plenty of poor-performing UK graduates as well. What's my vision? And this is literally 5-10 minutes left now, Michael, about training. And this is the privilege that I feel that I can give back to training. I can give back to the community. I can give back to the system, because what I owe from the system is huge. You have no idea that I could have ever dreamt where I am today. So I feel this is my way of giving back to the system, is through my role as postgraduate dean for various specialties. And in the next 5-10 minutes, all I wanted to share was, where are we with general practice, and what are the priorities for general practice? And some of those priorities are huge. They are evolving. Some good inroads are being made, but the biggest of them all I've tried to list is, we're still not able to attract enough people to general practice as a career. It still is a challenge to make general practice attractive for our young doctors, and that remains one of those perpetual challenges ever since Val Voss wrote many 10 years, 12 years ago. Recruitment is a challenge, and I'll explain to you why in a minute. But we're doing some good work in the recruitment. You'll say on the face of it, we recruit 100%. For the last 5 years, we've recruited all the posts that went into general practice. But is that still enough? It probably isn't, and I'll share why it isn't. readiness for independent practice is becoming one of those big things. Why are our doctors completing 3 years, 4 years into general practice training, but don't feel ready to become partners? They still feel there's something else they would like to do, or travel, or do some locum jobs. I think the partnership model still remains the bedrock of primary care in Scotland. And part of our GPST teaching review is focusing on that readiness piece for our doctors. Retention, you can fill the bucket as much as you like, but if it's leaking on the other end, there is absolutely no point. And we're having genuine investment in retention schemes, which I'll share as well. Educator support, health inequalities, and remote and rural. Of course, that is Scotland's priority. 70% of our land mass is remote and rural. So that has to be. Some good news coming here. The 2025 data, for the first time in 4 years, we've had a growth in the number of whole-time equivalent GPs by 4%. Is it still enough? It probably isn't, but it's a step in the right direction. There's also been a reduction in vacancies from 7.6 to 4%. Practice nurses have increased as well by about 8%. So the graph is inching in the right direction, but we still got more to do. The issues are obviously, you can see the workforce and how the workforce is distributed in terms of age, in terms of less than full-time, and in terms of sex demographics. What is our training infrastructure? You might be curious to know, what is our training pipeline? We've got about 1,300 doctors currently in Scotland training to be a GP. Headcount might be close to 1,400. And that's a huge number. And as Michael said, 40% of them close to our international medical graduates. 50% of IMGs joining our system have never worked in the UK before. So that's the kind of navigational challenge and educational support challenge that we have. Do we put in enough in the system? I think so. 350 to 400 doctors qualifying every year after year, and the graph again going in the right direction. But the inching in terms of the workforce is still not as much as we would have liked. But is training delivering? Well, 350 to 400 trainees CCTing, I think that the system probably is delivering. But what's happening there simultaneously is a lot of our CCTing doctors are from an international medical graduate background. They don't have indefinite right to stay in the system. So many of them are being forced to leave the system for no fault of theirs. A lot of our workforce is a female workforce, but actually I will correct right away if anybody's thinking women are the only cohort to go less than full-time, men go less than full-time too, and for various reasons. And we've got the largest less than full-time rate ever in the last 10 years currently. What's our training infrastructure? We've got about 400 practices amongst the 890 GP practices in Scotland who are training practices. That's our training infrastructure. So about 40 to 42%. That's not bad when you compare to UK, the rest of the 4 nations, and about 865 educational supervisors. Do they feel supported? Far from it. Do they feel the educational burden? A lot. Are they seeing the burden of complex training needs? Absolutely. Can we do more to support them? 100%. And that's one of those key priorities that we're having. And as you can expect, we've put in a lot of investment in the growth. Most of that growth you'll see in the last 2 years has happened in the remote and rural areas. So the highest growth of training infrastructure is actually in our remote and rural areas. Significant, and still we need to do more. And we're doing so much more to support our educators. We want more of them to come in the system. We want them to get the reaccreditation support. We want to reduce their workload. We want to give them educational support. And this is one of those biggest pieces of work that we did over the last 2 years to support our educators. Of course, still more can be done. So where are we? And this is one of those issues here, which is Scottish domiciled doctors or individuals are not choosing medicine. And of those, not many are choosing general practice as a career. And that's one of our biggest challenges, is to attract Scottish domiciled doctors as well. And you can see this trend of application rates dropping. What do doctors want? There's a study of all the undergraduate schools in the UK, about 22,000 doctors. And very few of them intend to stay in the system. And that's a problem for the system. Never mind which specialty they choose. They want to leave the UK. They're not satisfied with their work-life balance. They're not satisfied with their work conditions. They want to hop off the training pipeline. They want to adopt flexible careers. They want to take on standalone jobs. And that's another challenge. This is stark. 70% of our UK graduates after completing GPCCT stay in the system after 2 years. Only 40% of our IMGs trained in the system after CCT stay in the UK or in Scotland. And that is the attrition that we are seeing. And that's the problem. Are we doing a good job about training? Well, by and far, yes. Supervisors are happy, trainees are happy, but there is no time to train. There are frontline pressures that GPs are facing, hospitals are facing, rota problems, clinical delivery problems. Time to train is a big problem. Educators and learners both are getting burnt out. And that is a big, huge challenge for us. And that's the last 2025 result. As I said, growing less than full time. At ST3, close to 60% of our doctors are less than full-time, 80% being the commonest. What that does is your tail of training increases. And that's the graph which shows the time taken by a doctor starting GP training in Scotland to actually complete. It's closing towards 4 years now for most of our doctors. So most doctors are taking a lot longer in training. And that's multifactorial, less than full-time, extensions to training, not passing the exam, etc., etc. Is this a problem we should be worried about? Yes, of course. I mean, that is the volume that we rely on an international workforce. GMC prediction models say that even if we have wholesale medical school expansion in the UK, reliance on IMGs will remain up to 40% by 2036. Now that's why we need to continue to invest in this space, and we continue to nurture and support our IMG colleagues. That's the trend. I said to you all, I'll share what's happening in the recruitment. This is what's happening in the recruitment. The number of applications for general practice has rocketed up. Look at that graph. 20,000, 21,000 applications for 4,000 something odd posts in the UK. Majority is driven by international medical graduates. That has led to some controversial conversations in the Home Office, I must say, which is this Restoring Control Over Immigration, which is the white paper submitted in May 2025, where the emphasis is on raising the bar for overseas medical graduates, tightening the kind of visa conditions, and signals a very strong emphasis on local talent. Yes, I mean, it's still not formalized, but it is one of those big moves. I think everybody in this room will identify about this paradox between shortage. We still need GPs, but GPs are not getting jobs. I mean, how does that match up to, and why is that happening? We did a career destination survey published literally last week, and we asked about 488 ST3s what do they want to do, and this was the result. 80% of them would want to stay in Scotland. Majority would want to work less than 5 to, nobody wants to work 8 sessions, only 30%. Majority would want to work 5 to 7 sessions. There's an increasing preference for a salaried role. Many would steer away from partnerships lately. Fellowships and the retainer scheme is becoming more popular, and people's job priorities have changed. Work-life balance, familiarity of the practice, golden hellos, commuting distance, childcare is becoming an increasing priority. And what we need to do as workforce planners is respond to that. We've done some fabulous work in fellowships, a range of fellowships across the country. Michael, you've been involved in several of these as well. We've brought in the new Scott GP Retain and Sustain scheme, which is a new fancy name for the retainer scheme, where the eligibility criteria is no longer just childcare. It could be anything, many other things, IMGs included. And then we've obviously refreshed the returner scheme, and we've had about 30 doctors joining last year, the Scottish system, from the returner scheme. So there is a bit of work happening, but still more can be done. What do I think will shape the future of GP training? This is my last 2 slides. We will all have read the population health framework, the commitment that government has. I was this morning in a meeting with Scottish government, and there is a good level of understanding and support to moving funding, moving services closer to the community, investment in people rather than diseases and treatments. And I think that shift is going to be pretty pivotal in everything that we do in workforce planning. The alignment to population health, with general practice sitting at the heart of it, not just looking at patients, but also looking at their society, the social determinants of health, GPs being anchor institutions, the relationship continuity was once again mentioned as the key indicator for a successful general practice, the focus on prevention, health, weight, and then digital enablement for our colleagues and patients, as well as our colleagues. What are we going to do over the last 12, 24 months? We're going to focus our training on the geography and the population need. The geographic maldistribution, where everybody wants to be in Glasgow and Edinburgh, is no longer serving the needs of our Scottish population. We will have to redistribute our trainees, and that's what we'll have to listen and understand where the population need is. We're going to have to change where training happens. Yes, there are discussions about 3 years, 4 years, 2 years in general practice versus the current 18 months in general practice. But whatever it is, the experience needs to be community-based rather than hospital-based. So we're going to bring in interface posts and some sort of rotational changes in that. Competency-based progression. It's okay if somebody needs 4 years. Your needs are different than mine. I have a different starting point. It shouldn't be a penalty. It shouldn't be felt like a negative. But if somebody's progressing well, let them progress and let them finish in 2 years. That's perfectly okay. So competence-based progression is very much live. The assessment burden is going to have to be looked at. There's a big body in the UK thinking, should exams still continue in postgraduate education? Should it not all be workplace-based assessment that will define progression in training? So watch that space. There's a big momentum in that. Generalist skills. All of us should be exposed to generalist skills, including hospital doctors. That's a big change. Educational innovations, AI, simulation, very much here to stay. If we don't embrace it, somebody will run with it. So we have to embrace it. Models of training will have to change. Rotational models will have to change, and a focus on academic general practice, which is really, really suffering. So all in all, in short, yes, I've shared a lot of challenges, but I want you to hear loud and clear that recruitment remains buoyant in Scotland. We are number one for the last 5 years in the UK. National Training Survey, 3rd year in a row, we have been ranked the number one amongst the 18 deaneries in the UK for experience as well as satisfaction. Our exam results are better than any other deanery in the UK. Our training capacity continues to grow. We've conducted one of the largest GPST teaching reviews with the view of readiness for independent practice. We've revamped educator support, and we've got a range of retention innovations now. Just in case you all were wondering what's happening to that boy and girl who you all saw in the picture, then, you know, that's, sorry, I should have, not clicking, is it? So those are the key highlights of the achievements I wanted to share, which the slide wasn't projecting, which is our successes, if you like. And if it moves, if you were thinking where that boy who was there in that picture is, then that's him, 26 years old, now in London in finance. We managed to convince our daughter, rather than we managed to not deter her, but she joined medicine in Edinburgh. So, you know, like a proper Indian, I've thought about all that investment, you know, investing in health so that she'll be my health power of attorney, investment in finance so that he'll be my financial power of attorney when the time comes. But no, can't thank enough the system for where I am. If I've said anything in the talk which was probably not necessarily comfortable, or it challenged some of those boundaries, then I apologize. It is entirely a personal view. If you want to provoke deeper thinking, then I think there are some challenges that you have to bring into conversations. But hope you enjoyed that little bit of chat. Very happy to be challenged or have a chat with me later on about anything. But more importantly, if you have any suggestions about a future workforce in general practice, a sustainable workforce, please do chat with me, drop me a note. That's my email there. Thank you.
Thank you, Nitin. In actual fact, I can give you Nitin's phone number if you want. No, just kidding, mate. I was one of those poorly performing UK graduates, who just managed to scrape my MRCGP. I'm quite jealous you got a pass with distinction, even considering your disabilities, your toilet phobia. Right. Do we have any questions from the floor? And I'm happy to also take questions from James about radiology and the problems with training you might have, Jennifer about social care, and Paddy about the police force. So any questions for anyone? Marianne? What's your name and where'd you come from?
Yes, hello, I'm Marianne Burrow and I'm a fellow of the college. Thank you very much for that talk. I did enjoy it. There were so many points at which I had to smile. Now, I've got a hobby horse and it's less than full-time training and work. I just think we need to redefine it and stop being so hung up on that 40-hour week. If you have to sit in a car on the expressway or the motorway at peak times, you're saying, why are we all doing this? So there is no need for us as doctors to consult at, say, 5 p.m. at night. We could be more flexible and we could see that as a value rather than a detriment. Thank you.
Nitin.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Marianne. I think Public Health Scotland would now redefine whole-time equivalent in general practice as 8 sessions. But still, how do you quantify that in hours, isn't it? And is actually 40 hours a week or 80% less than full-time the new norm? And should we not just embrace that as the new way of delivering all our services? And so even though at the moment it looks like it's a little bit of a problem we need to solve, actually we need to redefine how we plan workforce. And one of the things we're doing, Marianne, is establishing a whole-time equivalent workforce planning model. So essentially saying, if this is what our need is in Scotland, so 1266 is the number you saw, irrespective of what actually the less than, whatever that deficit is, we need to ensure the bodies or the head count is enough to supply what we need for our communities, what we need for service delivery. So we are redefining this whole-time equivalent funding as well as workforce planning model. But yeah, I mean, you know, I have absolute support for flexible careers. I mean, if we don't embrace that, we're not going to have doctors who will any longer want to be in our system. So, yeah.
Thank you, Nitin. Any other questions? Oh, yep, Joe, coming to you. What's your name and where'd you come from, love?
I'm Jo McGettigan. When you mentioned the competency-based, assessment, thinking back to the days where, we could do different jobs in different places and come back at some point and have that experience assessed and, be told, okay, you've satisfied what needs to happen to be, to enter your final year as a GP. How flexible is GP training going to be, bearing in mind that one of the reasons that a lot of young doctors are fleeing the country is because, they're applying for jobs and the jobs aren't there, or they're, the jobs are in different parts of the country to where, friends, family, partners are.
Yeah, Joe, absolutely. I think one of the biggest changes that happened was when we made the MRCGP as a compulsory endpoint in GP training. And unless you complete a formal GP training in the UK, you cannot practice as a GP. And that served its purpose, I think, when it came into play. At the moment, the And I'll come to what we should do, but at the moment, we do have some inbuilt mechanism to allow accelerated progression in training. So if somebody's got previous experience, 6 to 12 months of that can be acknowledged at the point of start of training. And that's a small drop in the ocean to recognize previous experience, I think. We're also facilitating earlier CCTs or finishing if people have passed the exams, demonstrated capabilities in all the areas. What's the point in just completing? So time-based progression is really now being diluted into competency-based progression. What we should do, and you're looking at the larger workforce, is the largest growth in the workforce currently locally employed doctors, not doctors in training. So the number of locally employed doctors who are doing clinical development fellows, standalone posts, SAS and staff grade posts is huge. That's the biggest workforce currently which GMC is dealing with. So what we need is a mechanism where people can bring those competencies and do different jobs which are relevant to general practice and still be able to accredit in general practice. So I think the future of supporting our workforce into training or sustainable delivery would be to allow them to come into those sort of systems and pathways from different entry points. So I definitely feel that is going to happen. And it was as early as this morning, the discussions about future of medical workforce in Scotland. This is one of the groups we have to look at. And that's, again, aligned to competency-based training. Yeah.
Thank you, Nitin. We've got John. Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm John Tobias. I'm a retired GP. One of your slides earlier on showed the retention differences between IMGs and UK graduates. Jumping back 5 years effectively, the figures all show that if you are a UK graduate, you're much more likely to stay in the UK and continue working in the UK. The problem I can see is that you're going into this hamstrung already by government policy of ring fencing sometimes more than half of the medical school places for foreign applicants. And cutting out a great deal of talent that's maybe available locally and much more likely to stay and work in the country. Just wonder what your thoughts are on that and how policy has affected that.
So John, no, thank you. I think from an undergraduate perspective, a lot has changed over the last three to 5 years. I think the government has established now caps on how many international students can enter medical education in Scotland. So we've got a very clear understanding of numbers, including widening access numbers. So that is very much a mandate now from Scottish government to medical schools. Some are delighted, some are not very happy about it, of course, as you can imagine. What obviously is happening in the IMG space, particularly from a general practice point of view, is we've got this sort of kind of pot of applicants, and we've got a lot of numbers, but we've got some of our Scottish domicile doctors. We know that last year there were about 85 of them who were appointable to GP training, but couldn't get into GP training in Scotland. But at the same time, even if that they all were accommodated, we still have a reliance on international recruitment. And the current recruitment models are quite challenging because general practice recruitment is a national recruitment. So it's a central system and doctors' preference, and it's all based on the entrance, which is the MSRA exam. And whatever your ranking is, so geography or your roots are not given that much value. There is a new sort of premise we are working on, which is called a ticket to train, which is alignment to your where your domicile, alignment to your commitment to specialty, and alignment to geography. When we researched all our postgraduate doctors, the two biggest things that came as priorities for them were commitment to geography and then commitment to specialty. And then a lot of other factors came into it. What about our IMGs? I mean, general practice is a 3-year program. It's very difficult to establish roots in 3 years. And And then we've got the hurdles of visas and inability to stay beyond a particular point. So in a way, we are investing so much, 40%, as I say, in a training pipeline, but we're not able to support them to continue, which is shooting ourselves in the foot a bit in that sense. And I'll be the last one to say that they don't contribute to a high level to the system. And that's, but there are a lot of issues here, but good point to highlight. Yeah.
I think I read some research that 40% of GPs in Wales grew up 10 miles from where they practice. So we just need to accept applicants from Kirkwall, Dingwall, Kyle of Loch Alshire. Anyway, we've had 3 questions from people just past their first 5 years. Have we got any questions from trainees? Any other questions? Oh, Lindsay, and then Precious.
Hi there, that's very late. I'm Lindsay Owen. I'm a GP partner and trainer, and then the rest of the week I'm an undergraduate clinical lecturer at the University of Glasgow. I have 2 questions, if that's okay. First is, as a trainer, what would be your top tip other than going to the WINS course to welcome an IMG into your practice? And my second question is, obviously there's NHS delivery is about to take over NES and NSS combined. What are your thoughts on that? Are you concerned because the consultation is out at the moment? Do you think that'll have a potential negative impact on being able to deliver, obviously, undergraduate and postgraduate medical education?
Yeah, no, thanks, Lindsay. About one of the papers I published a few years ago was labeled as "Knowing Me, Knowing You," and Yogini is nodding. She's read that one. It was about that first interaction between the trainer and the IMG. It's about knowing your IMG as a person, not just as a trainee. It's about facilitating that glass half full concept. I still remember Bob inviting me to bring Indian food. And I asked Bob, what should I bring? And he said, chicken tikka masala. And I said, there isn't anything called as chicken tikka masala. I have never heard in all my years in India, chicken tikka masala. Chicken tikka masala is a Glasgow thing, basically it is. It's a British thing, it's a Glasgow thing. There's nothing called as Madras curry, there's nothing. But, the point I'm trying to make is kind of including and involving them in that initial phase, understanding them beyond just them as a trainee, as a human being, what their practical challenges are, where they are in the culture shock graph, what are their additional needs. And every IMG is different. My needs will be quite different to somebody else's. So getting that trainer-trainee relationship, we've got such powerful quotes in that paper of trainees saying, actually, it's the first time somebody's shown interest in me. And that's quite powerful. Sorry, your second question was the NHS delivery. That's for folk who don't know, NHS Education for Scotland and National Services Scotland, 2 of the biggest health boards in the country, are coming together in April 26, forming a single organization called as NHS Delivery. Don't ask me who chose the name. It doesn't display any enthusiasm, but it wasn't our choice. I think the government have listened and they're rethinking about the name, which is brilliant. As far as we're aware, the 2 biggest things which will change after that are the prioritization of digital infrastructure and digital innovations, because NSS are very, very kind of ahead of the curve in that. I think we've been told training and education will be one of the key pillars of the new organization. So it'll be business as usual for us. And the third is the integration of NHS or linkage of NHS delivery to the service renewal framework. Population health framework is one of that 3 papers in that, which means good news for the community, I think, which means more investment in the community. And indirectly, you'll have heard yesterday's BMA Scottish Government announcement of recurrent additional funding to primary care. If you look at the details behind that paper, part of it is retained for recruitment and retention as well. So there's good news at the moment in that direction of travel. Of course, May 26 will bring some other challenges, I'm sure.
Yes, hopefully GP partners will get more money and be able to take on more salaried GPs, because people want to be salaried at the moment from your research. Thank you. Precious, you had a question.
Thank you very much for that, Dr. Gambhir. My name is Precious. I'm a salaried GP and I work at the university as well. I wanted to ask, given the changing demographic which you've mentioned, do you think there's a need for IMGs to become trainers and be involved in training? I'm going to guess your answer to the question, and if so, what are the potential barriers that might be different from a UK graduate becoming a trainer?
Well, I mean, that's a brilliant question, Precious, because about 4 years ago, somebody might know already, we tried this exercise. The dean at that time, and I was assistant director that time, we initiated a drive to encourage international medical graduates to become trainers. And we held 6 webinars in the evening for our IMG GPs across the country. And one of the key themes that came up is a lack of awareness, but most importantly, this feeling that I'm never going to be successful anyway. This is not for me. And I said that in my own talk, that I had that belief for a long time that this is some sort of a glass ceiling or an ivory tower where I don't think I will ever be recruited anyway. A lot has changed. Things have changed now. So my genuine plea is we have a diverse learning group. We have 40% of our learners are IMGs. If we don't have trainers from a diverse background, then there's a mismatch. And we're actually not able to provide that connect, that intelligence, that expertise. So I would encourage all IMG GPs to please consider being a trainer. I mean, I don't think there are additional skills that you really need to, when I sat, Sharon, you'll remember when we used to do those appraiser recruitment courses, I was sitting for my kind of assessment, and the feedback I received was your body posture wasn't appropriate. That was one of the first feedbacks I received. And I think what I had done was I'd crossed my legs when I was talking to the appraisee. So, and I was thinking, is that the first feedback you want to give me about me joining to become an appraiser? I promise you a lot has changed in the system. You will be very welcome to become a trainer, appraiser, or whatever role you want. And we want educators, we want senior educators from diverse background, not just ethnicity, but also all the protected characteristic, disability, sex, gender, everything. Yeah.
Yeah, it's totally the other way now. I got told off for manspreading. We've got no questions online. Any other questions? I think Nitin has done his time. Can we just give it up one more time for Professor Nitin Gambhir? Thank you. Nitin, before you go, we've got a present for you. Thank you very much for coming along. Thank you for talking to us. I'd like to give you this quake as an appreciation of coming along today. Can we just get a picture without the mic? Maybe without this mic as well. Thank you, Nitin. Thank you. Thank you very much. Nitin, I know you're going to sit down, but I wonder whether I could ask you to help us dish out some of these awards because of your role in NES. That's for the Quake. Can you tell me which ones are first? Oh, Sharon, do you want to do this? Yes, or if you want to give out the awards. I just... So, can I hand over the mic to you? This is Sharon. Sharon is our provost. Sharon is the driving force behind fellowships in this area. She forced me to pay for it and then started giving away for free. Yeah. Mike Russell, our treasurer, you can back me up here, can't you? Yeah, so he had to pay for his as well. Right. So who's up first? Oh, just here.
It's very tall.
First up is the Stuart Murray Prize 2025 for the highest score. Go yourself on the SCA exam, Dr. Anthony Kinsey. Come on up. get a picture. Rachel, do you want to come up as well? Get a picture with him? Picture with Rachel as well. Rachel, who's doing next year's lecture on AI. Next up is the James Scobie Award 2025 for the highest score in the AKT exam. And this goes to both Dr. Catherine Lennon and Dr. Louise Clark. Please come up. James and Jennifer, do you want to sort of make your way this way as well so we can get a picture of you both with your partners receiving your award? Okay, get a picture. And can we get a picture one either side with your partners with you as well? Thank you. Sorry about this. We're just going on to Instagram, so we're just trying to get a load of pickies to choose from. Thank you so much. Next, the first person I met here this evening, yeah? Next is University of Glasgow Comet Elective Poster Prize, Libby Radcliffe. And Paddy, do you want to come up as well so you can get a picture of when she's done? Just jump in. Thank you very much. Well done. Is it fellowships next? Next, we have fellowships, FRCGP. First up is Dr. Beth Crowson. Beth, come on down. Oh, I do apologize. I'm so sorry. We had 7 this year, and we have 3 attendees. Carolyn, yes, we met. Hello. Come on up. Carolyn, one of the first cohorts to get it for free. Not that I'm bitter. Next up is our very own John. John Tobias. Just came onto faculty board, is our Elm Palm rep. Went to conference recently and loved it. And last but by no means least, Leslie Megahy. Hello, Leslie. Well done. Thank you very much. Thank you, Sharon, for doing that. Is there anything else for us to do apart from thank you guys? I'd like a big round of applause for members and events, for Kirsty and Diana, and for Jacinda, who was here earlier, for putting this on, dealing with the IT, and coming up with a fabulous time. You don't have to rush off anywhere. You can stand around and chat. We've got this place until tomorrow. About 10-ish. Yeah, I'm not staying until 10. I've got to get home. Yeah. Nitin. Thank you. Yep. It's so nice to see someone who's turned negatives into positives and gone from, dare I say, an ugly duckling into a swan, a silver fox. Thank you so much, Nitin Gambhir.